people finally said, well, we now have the answer to what life is. It's just that question doesn't get asked anymore because this huge amount of basic cellular and cellular physiology and anatomy makes that question no-shows. And I have the feeling, and I could be totally wrong about this, that consciousness is a bit like that. The disanalogy is with something like what is fermentation, where there was a project, an answer was achieved, and we knew what the answer. I don't think that the question about consciousness is like that. There isn't, in my opinion, likely to be a single answer. And although I think in some ways Christoph probably agrees with me, because we both agree that you can start with what it's not. It's not. Consciousness is not in existence in any of those instances. And that there are a range of phenomena, although we tend perhaps to focus on awareness of visual phenomena. And we saw today the spectacular work of Richard Axel on sensory of olfactory phenomena. But there is also, of course, imagery. There are these rather more diffuse things like feeling well or ill or energetic. We're aware of spatial relations. We're aware of temporality. We're aware of ourselves as agents, partly because we have efferent copy. So the indirect approach is that we need to really understand a whole lot of functions, some of which I list here. But in addition to that, this is the part of the talk where I want to say that I, of course, am one of the people who is very thrilled and excited by the kind of developments we've seen in neuroscience, especially over the last 2 or 3 decades, because we really do see all kinds of places where the traditional philosophical questions are being ushered into the neurobiological laboratories, and that's a wonderful thing. But I also want to emphasize, and this is something that also came out this morning, that there are major issues that are not yet understood and resolved within neuroscience. And I'll try and quickly go through these without pausing for a long discussion. We do not yet understand how information is coded in neurons. It is true that tremendous progress has been made, especially in sensory systems. But bear in mind that there are many instances where there is a representation in the nervous system, but there is no stimulus. Let me give you an example from, I'm going to go forward and then I'm going to want to go back, that we saw this morning. We see the brain, the visual system represents a line of the triangle. It isn't there. So there is nothing in the stimulus to which that line corresponds. Similarly, in the case of so-called subjective motion, where a light goes off here and comes off here, and you see a line moving. There is nothing in the stimulus to which the activity of an MT neuron corresponds when it signals that it's aware of or that it's responding to motion. But more broadly, I suppose, and this is one thing Terry pointed out to me, that as a result of the work that he and Terry Sejnowski, that he did with Sidney Leckie, there isn't really anything in the world that corresponds to white. And yet we have a representation of white. It's something that the brain constructs. Brains also habitually, constantly represent goals, plans, projects. And the thing that is represented does not yet exist. So when these really quite wonderful accounts from the information theory people are offered to us as an account of how neurons process or code information, it has to be remembered that those accounts one and all, depend on the idea that the neuron is responding to an external stimulus. And it often, and perhaps importantly, almost never is so. Oh, sorry, I want to go back, if I may, please, and back one more. One more back. Back. There we go. The issue of spontaneous activity is not unrelated, and I'm going to go very fast through the rest of these. But one of the things that has now been a question that people are working on is, so what is all that activity in the resting